Elias Moretti was the man everyone wanted to be. With piercing eyes that held secrets, a mansion that could swallow small islands, and a last name stamped across skyscrapers, his power stretched far beyond boardrooms. He wasn't just rich, he was untouchable. At 43, Elias had built an empire from nothing, climbing from a slum orphan to a tycoon whose shadow cast fear and admiration. But behind his cold charm and designer suits was a man who secretly feared one thing: betrayal. His world was wrapped in routine: morning rides in bulletproof SUVs, meetings where billion-dollar deals were tossed around like spare change, and nights sipping aged whiskey while overlooking the city skyline. Yet amidst all that luxury, Elias cherished one thing deeply: his family. His wife, Clarissa, and his adopted son, Dante, were his heart. He guarded them fiercely, never knowing the same people he loved most were already sharpening the knife meant for his back. One rainy evening, while watching lightning split the sky, Elias received a call from his financial advisor. The man's voice trembled. "Sir, you need to come to the office immediately. Everything. It's all gone." Elias chuckled, thinking it a joke. But what waited for him would flip his perfect life upside down. His accounts were frozen, assets seized, and worst of all, his company, his legacy, was under investigation for fraud. And he was the prime suspect. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Elias, once a symbol of success, sat like a common criminal. His lawyers tried to maintain his dignity, but the damage was done. Photos of offshore accounts, falsified documents, and secret transactions painted him as a villain. Elias knew he'd never authorized any of it. But the evidence was damning, and it all traced back to someone close. He kept his eyes locked on the documents in front of him, but he could feel the piercing stares from the gallery. His wife, Clarissa, wasn't there. Neither was his son. The people he thought would stand by him had vanished like mist. Alone, he faced the storm, and the betrayal started to reveal itself like poison seeping through silk. The name that surfaced in the fraud report? Dante Moretti, his own son. Back at the mansion, guards refused him entry. His private jet was gone. His cars? Repossessed. Elias, who once bought islands as birthday gifts, now had only the clothes on his back. As he sat on the curb outside what used to be his home, drenched in rain and rage, he knew one thing. Someone inside his family had orchestrated this collapse. And he was going to find out who. Elias wandered the darkened streets, the same alleys he once ran through barefoot as a child. Life had come full circle. He traded tailored suits for a threadbare coat and silence for the noise of sirens and shouting vendors. People passed him without recognition, just another broken man. But inside the fire still burned. He found shelter in a rundown inn run by an old woman who didn't care for names. She gave him a room in exchange for scrubbing toilets and mopping floors. The irony wasn't lost on him. Once he employed thousands, now he served strangers for scraps. But Elias didn't complain. He needed the world to forget who he was. And in the shadows he started to piece things together. His assistant, Felix, had vanished the same day as the money. Dante's sudden interest in the company's offshore branches. Clarissa's secret meetings with a rival tycoon, Cashin Vel. Elias had been blinded by love. But now, he was about to see everything with clarity. One night, while scrubbing floors, Elias heard someone whisper his name. He turned and saw an old friend, Marco, his former driver, now a mechanic. Marco had been fired mysteriously a year ago without reason. But seeing Elias like this, he didn't ask questions. He simply said, "You're not done, sir? Come with me." Marco gave Elias a place to stay and access to an underground world Elias had long forgotten. Black markets, secret hackers, and people who owed him favors. He handed Elias a tablet filled with surveillance footage and hacked emails. The truth was worse than he imagined. Clarissa and Cashin had been lovers for years, conspiring to destroy Elias and take over his company. But why involve Dante? That answer came in the form of a confession video. In it, Dante spoke into the camera, shaking. "He lied to me all my life. I'm not his real son. And when I found out how he bought me, like a possession, I wanted revenge." Elias dropped the tablet. The son he loved had become the dagger that pierced his soul. Elias sat alone in Marco's garage, haunted by Dante's words. He remembered holding Dante as a baby, feeding him, teaching him how to ride a bike. Was it all fake? Was Dante so broken by a lie that he could destroy his own father? Elias wasn't perfect, but he had loved that boy more than anything. And now he was the architect of his downfall. But Elias wasn't just grieving, he was evolving. Pain was chiseling him into something sharper. "They took everything," he told Marco. "But they forgot who I used to be. Before the suits, before the name. Elias knew the only way to reclaim his life was to destroy the empire now built on his ashes. But this time he'd do it from the underground. He started making moves. Anonymous accounts. Secret investments. Sleeper allies. Elias became a ghost in the system. He began feeding misinformation to Cashin's new empire, slowly shaking its foundation. And as his enemies enjoyed their stolen throne, they didn't realize a storm was brewing right beneath them. Cashin Vel was living large, flaunting his new wealth, and parading Clarissa like a trophy. But cracks were forming. Projects failed mysteriously. Investors pulled out at the last minute. Whispers about Elias's return made them paranoid. Cashin hired hackers and bodyguards. Clarissa drank more. Dante? He vanished from public view. Elias was careful. He didn't attack directly, he created chaos. He leaked documents showing Cashin's past crimes. Exposed false contracts. Made shareholders question every decision. Meanwhile, he watched Clarissa spiral, her guilt masked by pearls and pills. Elias had loved her once. But that woman was long gone. Then came the first strike. A massive contract Cashin depended on was sabotaged. Millions lost. Cashin raged. Clarissa cried. Elias, hidden in a warehouse, smiled for the first time in months. The legacy they thought they'd buried was waking up. And it was hungry. Late one night, Clarissa received a package. No return address. Inside was a mirror with the words, "Do you recognize the woman staring back at you?" Beneath it, a flash drive. She plugged it in. Video footage of her with Cashin, conspiring, laughing about Elias. Then, footage of Elias in the streets, cleaning floors, sleeping on benches. Clarissa broke down. She hadn't known he was still alive, still suffering. Her betrayal had gone too far. Once she had loved Elias deeply. But Cashin promised her freedom. Power. Now all she felt was shame. She began skipping meetings, ignoring Cashin's calls. And Elias knew, guilt was his next weapon. Meanwhile, Dante reappeared, attending therapy under a fake name. He was unraveling. Elias, watching from afar, didn't approach him. Not yet. The boy needed to face what he had done. Elias wasn't just after revenge. He wanted redemption, for his name, his legacy, and maybe, his family. Elias, now a phantom orchestrating his comeback, moved with precision. He bought out small tech firms under aliases, slowly building a secret empire in the shadows. Every time Cashin celebrated a new deal, Elias was already 3 steps ahead, ensuring it would collapse under its own weight. One by one, Cashin's pillars of power cracked. But Elias didn't want to just destroy, he wanted to reclaim. He sent a message to an old board member, once loyal to him, now on the fence. The message was simple: watch what happens next. The next day, the media exploded with a scandal linking Cashin to international money laundering. The board was shaken. Clarissa disappeared from the public eye. And Dante? He watched it all in silence, guilt gnawing at his insides. Elias, however, wasn't interested in watching from the sidelines anymore. He showed up at the building that once bore his name, disguised, calm, calculating. His eyes scanned every hallway like a soldier returning to enemy territory. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. Cashin's paranoia turned into fury. Board members began resigning. Investors withdrew. He blamed Clarissa, but she was already gone, having checked herself into a private rehab. Cashin stood alone, screaming into a void that once echoed with applause. Elias watched from a distance, emotionless. Letting his enemies destroy themselves was more satisfying than any courtroom victory. Then came the headlines: former billionaire Elias Moretti cleared of all charges. The news broke the internet. Someone, an anonymous whistleblower, had exposed the real culprits behind the fraud. The documents were flawless. Untraceable. Cashin's name was on every page. And Elias? He was declared a victim, not a criminal. In that moment, the man the world had written off was back in the headlines. But Elias didn't run to the cameras. He remained in the shadows, letting the world buzz while he made his final move. The stolen empire had crumbled. Now, it was time to build something greater, from the ground up. Dante showed up at Marco's garage unannounced. He looked nothing like the privileged son of a billionaire. His eyes were hollow, clothes wrinkled, hands shaking. He knelt before Elias without saying a word. Elias, silent for a long moment, finally asked, "Why?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "I was angry," Dante said. "I thought you used me. I thought I was just a tool. I didn't know how much you cared until I saw what they did to you." Tears rolled down his cheeks. "I didn't just destroy your name. I destroyed us." Elias didn't respond. Not with words. He pulled Dante to his feet, looked into his son's eyes and said, "You have a lot to make up for." From that day, Elias began training Dante, not as a successor but as a survivor. He taught him the grit, the hustle, the hunger. Dante, once spoiled and bitter, learned to work with his hands, to think like a builder. Elias didn't forgive easily. But he knew redemption was not given, it was earned. Clarissa re-emerged, frail but clear-eyed. She sent Elias a letter, not asking for forgiveness but explaining her story. "I didn't betray you for money," she wrote. "I betrayed you because I thought you no longer needed me. Cashin made me feel powerful again. But he used me. Like I used you." Elias read the letter 5 times. He didn't respond. Not yet. But he sent Dante to visit her. Clarissa broke into sobs when she saw her son. They talked for hours. For once, no manipulation. No masks. Just mother and son aching with guilt, trying to heal. Elias watched from a distance. The family he once cherished had been torn apart by lies and ambition. But something in him had changed. He was no longer the billionaire who feared betrayal. He was a man who understood that sometimes, to rebuild, you must first burn everything to the ground. Elias bought a forgotten warehouse on the edge of the city. There he began constructing his new headquarters, not a towering glass fortress, but a place where every corner held purpose. His team was small but loyal, people who had nothing to gain but everything to prove. He brought in ex-cons with tech skills, street-smart engineers, and 2 loyal bodyguards who once saved him from an ambush. Together, they built a company that operated in the shadows but disrupted industries in the light. Every success was anonymous. Every profit funneled into growing his secret empire. And one day, a headline changed everything again. Cashin Vel arrested in midnight sting. It was over. The man who tried to steal Elias's legacy now faced life behind bars. Elias closed the news feed, sipped his tea and whispered to himself, "Now, we rise." With Cashin gone, the boardroom Elias had once ruled was in chaos. The company was dying, its brand toxic. A secret vote was held among the remaining directors. And in a shocking move, they reached out to Elias with a single question. "Would you consider returning?" Elias didn't reply right away. Instead, he walked the halls of the company's shattered headquarters. He saw the cracks in the marble, the emptiness in the walls. And then he walked into the CEO's office, the very room where his empire had fallen. He placed his hand on the desk and smiled. "Let's begin." He didn't just return. He reinvented. The company rebranded. A new vision. A new mission. He brought in underdogs. Promoted loyalty. Fired opportunists. Within months, profits soared and public trust returned. Elias Moretti wasn't just back. He was better. Stronger. And this time no one would take it from him. Clarissa showed up at his office one day holding a small box. Inside was Elias's first wristwatch, the one he sold to pay for her engagement ring years ago. "I found it in Cashin's vault," she said. "He kept it like a trophy. I thought it should come back to you." Elias said nothing. Just stared at the watch. Memories flooded in, the nights they laughed, the fights they endured, the love that once lit up his world. "I don't hate you," he finally said. "But I can't love you the way I used to. That man died. So did that woman." Clarissa nodded. "I know. I just wanted to say goodbye properly this time." She left without expecting anything in return. And Elias, holding the old watch, finally let go of the pain. Some wounds don't heal with revenge. Only with release. Elias hosted his first staff meeting in the new headquarters. He stood before his team, no longer in tailored suits but in rolled-up sleeves. "We're not building a company," he said. "We're building a legacy. One that no betrayal can break." Dante now sat beside him, not as a son returned but as a partner earned. The boy who once sought revenge was now a man seeking purpose. And Elias knew, his true legacy wasn't the money or buildings. It was resilience. It was transformation. It was learning to rise even after being burned to ash. The media called it the greatest comeback in business history. But Elias didn't care about headlines. He only cared about one thing, truth. And now the truth belonged to him again. Just when peace seemed to settle, a ghost from Elias's past reappeared, Felix, the missing assistant. He had been hiding abroad, living off embezzled millions. But he made one mistake, bragging online. Elias tracked him, not to punish but to understand. When Elias confronted him, Felix trembled. "It was always about survival," he said. "You had everything. I had nothing. I thought I deserved a peace." Elias looked him in the eye and said, Then take your piece and disappear forever. Elias handed Felix a sum and a warning. Use it to build something better. But if you ever cross my path again, it won't be forgiveness waiting. Felix fled, never to be heard from again. Elias didn't need revenge. He needed peace. Years later, Elias sat on a hill watching the city lights below. Beside him, Dante laughed with his young daughter. The next generation. The legacy reborn. Elias had lost everything. Had been betrayed by blood and love. But he had reclaimed more than money, he had reclaimed himself. He once believed power came from wealth. But now he knew, it came from surviving loss. From choosing to rebuild, not with gold but with grit. From finding love not in promises but in actions. His name was Elias Moretti. And his legacy would never be stolen again. The story of a billionaire wasn't about riches. It was about rising after the fall. From riches to rags, and back.